When the stars went silent, Dr. Elena Vasquez had been staring at the same data screen for 3 hours, and the numbers still didn't make sense. As the lead astronomer at Luna Deep Space Monitoring Station, she had seen plenty of unusual readings over her 15-year career. Solar flares, asteroid formations, even the occasional comet that appeared from nowhere. But this was different. This was impossible. The energy signature was massive, larger than anything natural she had ever recorded. It was moving toward Earth at a speed that defied known physics, and it was getting stronger by the hour. Elena rubbed her tired eyes and checked the readings again. The object, whatever it was, had appeared at the edge of the solar system just 6 hours ago. Now it was already past Neptune's orbit. Her assistant, Dr. James Park, burst into the observation room without knocking. "Elena, you need to see this right now," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "The thing out there, it's not just moving, it's transmitting." Elena followed James to the communications array, where dozens of screens showed wave patterns and frequency analysis. The signal was complex, layered with multiple frequencies and what appeared to be mathematical sequences. But buried within the technical data was something that made Elena's blood run cold. "It's learning our languages," James whispered. "The signal started as pure mathematics, but in the last hour, it's begun incorporating fragments of human speech patterns. English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic. It's listening to our radio transmissions and teaching itself to communicate with us." Elena stared at the scrolling data. This was first contact, but not the kind humanity had dreamed about. This felt like something far more dangerous. "How long before it reaches Earth?" she asked. James checked his calculations twice. "At its current speed, approximately 65 hours. But Elena, that's not the worst part." He pointed to another screen showing a detailed scan of the approaching object. "This isn't a ship. It's a space station, the size of a small moon." 3 hours later, the object began transmitting in perfect English. General Marcus Stone was eating breakfast with his daughter when the emergency alert came through. As Earth's defense coordinator, he was accustomed to urgent calls, but the tone in Admiral Rodriguez's voice told him this was unlike anything they had faced before. "Marcus, you need to get to command immediately," Admiral Rodriguez said. "We have a situation that's beyond anything in our protocols. How quickly can you get here?" 20 minutes, Marcus replied, already grabbing his uniform jacket. He kissed his daughter goodbye, not knowing it might be the last normal moment he would ever have with her. The command center was chaos when Marcus arrived. Officers ran between stations. Screens displayed information faster than anyone could process, and the air hummed with tension. Admiral Rodriguez met him at the entrance, her face pale with worry. "It started transmitting 30 minutes ago," she said without preamble. "The message is being broadcast on every frequency simultaneously. It's addressed to the people of Earth." Marcus followed her to the main communications station, where a technician was working frantically to isolate the signal. The voice that emerged from the speakers was calm, measured, and utterly alien despite using perfect human language. "People of Earth," the voice began. "I am Directive Prime of the Hegemony Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our domain. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification." Marcus felt his hands clench into fists as the message continued. "The hegemony has brought order to 53,000 worlds across this galaxy. We have ended wars, eliminated poverty, and created perfect societies under our guidance. Your primitive civilization will benefit greatly from our administration. However, integration requires complete submission to hegemony authority." The voice paused, and in that silence, Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. "You have 72 standard hours to demonstrate your acceptance of hegemony rule. All military forces must be disbanded. All weapons must be surrendered. All governments must formally submit to hegemony authority. Compliance will result in peaceful integration. Resistance will result in total elimination of your species." The message repeated twice more, then stopped. The command center was completely silent. Admiral Rodriguez spoke first. "Marcus, in all our contingency planning, we never prepared for this. They're not asking for resources or territory. They want complete surrender of human civilization. Marcus stared at the screen showing the approaching alien station. What do we know about their capabilities? Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had been brought to command as the leading expert on the alien contact, stepped forward. General, based on our scans, their technology is centuries ahead of ours. The station approaching Earth generates more power than our entire planet uses in a year. We've detected weapon signatures that could sterilize continents. And you're certain they have the capability to back up their threats? Marcus asked. Elena nodded grimly. Sir, 12 hours ago, they demonstrated their weapons on Jupiter's moon system. 4 of Jupiter's smaller moons simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not broken apart. They were completely vaporized at the molecular level. The energy required for that kind of destruction is incomprehensible. The room fell silent again as everyone absorbed this information. Marcus walked to the main display screen, which showed Earth hanging peacefully in space, unaware that its existence now hung in the balance. Over the next 18 hours, emergency sessions were held at the United Nations, the European Union, the African Union, and every major government on Earth. The debates were intense, desperate, and ultimately futile. How do you negotiate with an enemy that has conquered 53,000 worlds and never lost a single conflict? President Martinez of the Americas Federation summed up the situation during a global video conference. We're not just facing invasion, we're facing extinction. This hegemony empire isn't interested in conquest in any traditional sense. They want to erase human civilization and replace it with their own system. Prime Minister Chen of the Pacific Alliance responded, "But what choice do we have? They've demonstrated the power to destroy planets. If we resist, they'll kill every human being on Earth." It was Dr. Elena Vasquez who made the discovery that changed everything. Working around the clock at Luna Station, she had been analyzing every piece of data about the hegemony's communications and technology. What she found gave humanity its first glimpse of hope. They're not gods, Elena announced during an emergency briefing with world leaders. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it follows predictable patterns. Every signal they've sent, every energy signature we've detected, operates within a very narrow range of frequencies. General Stone leaned forward. What does that mean? It means they've been using the same technology for so long that they've become rigid in their approach, Elena explained. When you conquer 53,000 worlds without ever facing real resistance, you don't need to innovate, you don't need to adapt. You just use the same methods that have always worked. Are you saying they have weaknesses? President Martinez asked. Elena nodded. I'm saying they have limitations. Their weapons operate on specific energy frequencies. Their communications follow predictable patterns. Their scanning technology has blind spots. Most importantly, their tactics appear to be identical for every world they've conquered. General Stone felt something he hadn't experienced since the crisis began. Excitement. Elena, are you telling me that an empire that has never lost a war might be vulnerable to tactics they've never encountered? Exactly, Elena replied. They expect every species to respond in logical, predictable ways. When faced with overwhelming force, most civilizations either surrender immediately or fight conventional battles they're destined to lose. But what if we don't do either? The war council that followed lasted 14 hours. Military leaders, scientists, and strategists from every nation on Earth contributed to a plan that was simultaneously brilliant and insane. If it worked, humanity might survive. If it failed, the manner of their destruction would at least be memorable. As the 72-hour deadline approached, the hegemony station took position in Earth's orbit. It was a structure so massive that it blocked out portions of the sky, visible to the naked eye from the planet's surface. Smaller ships, each the size of a city, deployed from the main station and positioned themselves around Earth's major population centers. The final message from Directive Prime was broadcast exactly 72 hours after the first contact. People of Earth, the compliance period has ended. Transmit your formal surrender now, or face the consequences of resistance. General Marcus Stone stood in the command center, surrounded by officers from every branch of Earth's military. The response had been prepared, voted on by every world leader and approved by emergency referendum in every democratic nation on the planet. Marcus activated the global communications array and spoke directly to the alien empire that had never known defeat. Directive Prime of the Hegemony Empire, this is General Marcus Stone speaking for the people of Earth. We have considered your offer carefully. Marcus paused, looking around at the faces of the men and women who were about to embark on the most desperate gamble in human history. Our answer is no. What they didn't expect. The silence that followed humanity's refusal lasted exactly 17 seconds. Directive Prime's response came through every communication device on Earth simultaneously, and for the first time, the alien's voice carried something that sounded almost like surprise. Clarification required. Directive Prime said, "Species designation, human. You have rejected integration protocols. This response is unprecedented in hegemony records. Please confirm your decision." Captain Sarah Chen was in the pilot seat of the experimental stealth ship Defiance when humanity's response was broadcast. She had volunteered for this mission, knowing it was likely a one-way trip, but the hegemony's confused reaction gave her hope that their desperate plan might actually work. Sarah commanded a fleet of 12 ships that officially didn't exist. The Ghost Fleet, as they called themselves, had been developed in secret over the past decade using technology that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. Each ship was small, fast, and equipped with experimental cloaking systems that had never been tested in actual combat. "All Ghost Fleet vessels, this is Defiance," Sarah transmitted on the encrypted channel. "The enemy has just revealed something very important. They're confused. In 53,000 conquests, no species has ever said no to them. They literally don't know how to respond to resistance." Through her viewport, Sarah could see the massive hegemony station hanging over Earth like a metal moon. Smaller attack ships were positioned around every major city, their weapons charged and ready to begin the systematic destruction of human civilization. But they were waiting for orders from a command structure that had never had to deal with Defiance. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been right. The hegemony's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They had become so accustomed to easy victories that they had no experience with actual warfare. On the surface of Earth, military bases across the globe were implementing the most unusual battle plan in human history. General Stone had given the order, and soldiers, pilots, and naval commanders were preparing for a war that would follow no conventional rules. Colonel Lisa Park was leading the ground forces' defense of New York City when the first hegemony attack ships moved into position above the metropolitan area. Instead of taking defensive positions or attempting to evacuate civilians, her troops were doing something that would have been considered insane in any previous conflict. They were making noise. Lots of noise. Every military vehicle in the city was broadcasting music, radio shows, television programs, and random conversations on every frequency simultaneously. Soldiers were playing instruments, singing songs, and generally creating as much chaotic sound as possible. The Psychological Warfare Division had determined that the hegemony's technology relied heavily on pattern recognition and predictable responses. Chaos was humanity's best weapon. "Colonel Park," came General Stone's voice over the tactical radio. "Are you ready for Phase 1? Lisa looked around at her troops, who were enthusiastically making the most beautiful cacophony of human culture she had ever heard. A jazz band was playing next to a group of soldiers singing opera. Children from a nearby school were reciting poetry while their teachers played classical music from portable speakers. "Sir, if making noise can save the world, then we're ready," Lisa replied. The first phase of humanity's defense began at exactly 1430 GMT. It was not an attack in any traditional sense. Instead, it was a demonstration of human unpredictability that left the hegemony's command structure completely baffled. Captain Sarah Chen led the Ghost Fleet in what appeared to be a suicidal charge directly at the hegemony's main station. But, instead of firing weapons or attempting to ram the alien structure, the 12 human ships began performing elaborate aerobatic maneuvers around the station. They flew in patterns that served no tactical purpose, broadcasting music and poetry, while occasionally firing their weapons at empty space. Directive Prime's response was immediate and confused. Unknown vessels, explain your tactical objectives. Your behavior patterns do not match any known military protocols. Sarah laughed as she piloted her ship through a perfect barrel roll around one of the station's communication arrays. That's the point, she replied on an open channel. We don't have tactical objectives. We're just flying around because we felt like it. This was humanity's strategy. Complete, deliberate irrationality. Every action taken by human forces violated basic military logic. Instead of protecting strategic targets, they protected random buildings. Instead of massing forces at defensive positions, they scattered them according to lottery numbers. Instead of maintaining communication security, they broadcast everything on public channels while singing folk songs. The hegemony's computer systems, designed to analyze and counter logical military strategies, simply couldn't process what they were seeing. For the first time in their empire's history, they were facing an enemy that made no sense. Dr. Elena Vasquez was monitoring the hegemony's communications from Luna Station when she made a discovery that changed the entire nature of the conflict. The aliens weren't just confused by human tactics, they were becoming genuinely concerned. General Stone, Elena reported via emergency channel, the hegemony is requesting reinforcements. Their communications indicate they've never encountered a species that behaves like this. They're actually worried about us. In orbit around Earth, Supreme Commander Thex 9 of the Hegemony Empire was experiencing something unprecedented in his 3,000-year military career: uncertainty. He had overseen the integration of 237 worlds personally, and each conquest had followed the same predictable pattern: show overwhelming force, demand surrender, crush any resistance quickly and efficiently. But the humans weren't following the pattern. They weren't surrendering, but they also weren't fighting in any recognizable way. Their military actions seemed designed to accomplish nothing except confusion. Their communications were a mixture of defiance, humor, and what appeared to be random cultural expressions. Analysis Officer, Thex 9 commanded, explain the tactical significance of the human's current behavior. The analysis officer, a being of pure logic whose species had been integrated into the hegemony 5 centuries ago, studied the data streams with growing frustration. Supreme Commander, there is no tactical significance. Their actions appear to be completely random. They are wasting resources, exposing their forces to unnecessary danger, and accomplishing no strategic objectives. Then why are they doing it? Thex 9 asked. Unknown, Supreme Commander. This behavior pattern does not exist in our conquest database. Thex 9 felt something he had not experienced in millennia: doubt. In all his years of service, every enemy had eventually revealed their strategy. Every species had logical reasons for their actions, even when those actions were desperate or foolish. But humans seemed to be acting without any strategy at all. The turning point came when Captain Sarah Chen decided to attempt something that was either brilliant or completely insane. Using the Ghost Fleet's stealth capabilities, she led her ships directly into the Hegemony Station's docking bays. Instead of sabotage or espionage, her mission was something far more unusual. Ghost Fleet, commence Operation Cultural Exchange, Sarah announced as her ships landed inside the alien station. What followed was the most bizarre military action in galactic history. Sarah's crews disembarked from their ships and began socializing. They approached Hegemony personnel with friendly greetings, offered to share human food, and attempted to start conversations about art, music, and literature. They were completely unarmed and made no attempt at violence or sabotage. They simply wandered through the station acting like tourists, expressing genuine curiosity about hegemony technology and culture, while sharing stories about human civilization. The hegemony's security systems were designed to respond to attacks, infiltration, and sabotage. They had no protocols for dealing with visitors who wanted to be friends. Supreme Commander Thex 9 received reports of the human incursion with growing bewilderment. They've boarded our station, his security chief reported, but they're not doing anything hostile. They're asking our personnel about their jobs and offering to teach them human card games. Are they gathering intelligence? Thex 9 asked. Not that we can detect, sir. They seem genuinely interested in cultural exchange. One of them is currently showing our engineers pictures of his children. Thex-9 stared at the security feeds showing humans and hegemony personnel engaged in what appeared to be casual conversation. In 3,000 years of military service, he had never seen anything like it. The final phase of humanity's defense plan began when every human on Earth simultaneously started doing something that had never occurred in galactic military history. They began telling the truth. Instead of propaganda or deception, every human communication became brutally honest. Military commanders admitted their plans were desperate and probably hopeless. Scientists acknowledged that their technology was primitive compared to the hegemonies. Political leaders confessed that they had no idea what they were doing. Directive Prime, General Stone broadcast on all frequencies. Since you seem confused by our behavior, let me explain. We know we can't defeat you in any conventional sense. Your technology is superior, your forces are overwhelming, and your ETO experience vastly exceeds ours. But we've decided that if we're going to be destroyed, we're going to be destroyed as ourselves. The broadcast continued with ordinary humans from around the world sharing their thoughts and feelings about the situation. A teacher from Brazil talked about her students. A farmer from Kenya described his crops. A musician from Ireland played a song he had written about the stars. For the first time in hegemony history, they were hearing the authentic voice of a species facing extinction, and that voice was not filled with hatred or despair. It was filled with curiosity, creativity, and an inexplicable determination to remain human even in the face of annihilation. Supreme Commander Thex-9 found himself listening to these transmissions with growing fascination. He had heard the final communications of countless species, and they were always the same: pleas for mercy, desperate bargaining, or furious defiance. But humans were doing something completely different. They were sharing their culture, their hopes, their fears, and their dreams with their would-be conquerors. The crisis reached its peak when Dr. Elena Vasquez made a discovery that changed everything. While monitoring hegemony communications, she detected something remarkable. The aliens were experiencing what could only be described as confusion-induced paralysis. General Stone, Elena reported, the hegemony forces have stopped all aggressive actions. They're not retreating, but they're not attacking either. Their communications indicate they're requesting guidance from higher authority on how to handle a situation that's not covered in their protocols. On the hegemony station, Supreme Commander Thex-9 was indeed requesting guidance. For the first time in his career, he had encountered an enemy that could not be categorized, predicted, or understood using standard hegemony analytical methods. The response from hegemony high command was unprecedented. Supreme Commander Thex-9, withdraw all forces from the human system immediately. This species requires further study before integration protocols can be determined. As the massive hegemony fleet began its departure from Earth's solar system, Captain Sarah Chen and her crew were still aboard the alien station, having what appeared to be a pleasant conversation with their former enemies about the differences between human and hegemony approaches to music. "Will you be leaving now?" asked the hegemony officer who had been serving as their unofficial host. Sarah looked around at her crew, who had spent the last few hours making friends with beings from an empire that had come to destroy their world. "I suppose we should," she said. "But this has been really interesting. Would it be possible to stay in touch?" The hegemony officer, for the first time in his 700-year career, found himself genuinely uncertain about proper protocol. "I will need to consult with my superiors about that," he replied. As the Ghost Fleet departed the hegemony station and returned to Earth, the crisis that had threatened to end human civilization came to an end in the most unusual way possible, with a mutual agreement to postpone the conquest indefinitely, while both sides tried to figure out what had actually happened. General Marcus Stone stood in the command center, watching the alien fleet disappear into the depths of space. Earth was safe, at least for now, but no one was quite sure how they had achieved victory, or if what had happened could even be called a victory. Dr. Elena Vasquez summed up the situation perfectly. "We didn't defeat the hegemony empire. We confused them so badly that they decided to leave and think about us for a while. As reports came in from around the world, it became clear that humanity had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. They had survived contact with the hegemony not through superior firepower or clever tactics, but by being so authentically human that their would-be conquerors couldn't figure out how to conquer them. The story spread throughout the galaxy in the months that followed. For the first time in hegemony history, an empire that had never known defeat had encountered a species that couldn't be defeated because they refused to fight in any way that made sense. And in a universe where logical, predictable behavior was the norm, humanity had discovered that sometimes the most powerful weapon of all is the courage to be completely, utterly, and inexplicably yourself.